Hey everybody, how's it going? Andrew here with a quick reminder about our Indie Game Movement Masterclass series. If you missed it, I just highly recommend that you check it out. It was episodes 375 to 377 because we went deep on some of the most critical parts of game development, like how to hook and engage players through candid discussions and practical strategies with our guest, Patrick Rose. Now, if you listened to those episodes and found them helpful, it's important to know that those conversations were inspired by our guest's full course, How to Create Irresistible Games, which takes things even deeper. And as a listener, you can still grab an exclusive discount if you decide to purchase the course. And honestly, it's a win win because you'll be investing in yourself and supporting the podcast at the same time as we get an affiliate commission. And one more thing, if you missed out on the Masterclass Series Premier Special discount, don't fret because as an IGM listener, you can still take advantage of our exclusive forever discount. So if you're ready to take action and dive into the course, just make sure to use the code IGM to take advantage of your exclusive discount. And to do that, just find the link in the show notes of this episode wherever you're listening. So thanks again. And as always, appreciate you guys. Now let's get right back to the show. Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Indie Game Movement, the podcast that talks about the marketing and business of indie games. I'm Andrew Pappas. I'll be your host. And today we're going to be talking about standing out and optimizing game marketing. So marketing indie games is an uphill battle, and not every marketing idea hits the mark where we would like it to. But through an open mind and some iteration, it's still very possible. So today, we're going on an iterative journey with our guests and how they went about refining marketing approaches to determine what makes campaigns stand out in a crowded space. So that's what we're going to be talking about right here today on Indie Game Movement. Hey, everybody, and we're back. And today with us, I have David Elahee with us. David, how is it going? And thanks for being on the show.
Hey, thank you, Andrew. It's lovely to be here.
Definitely. And, for those of you who don't know David, he is a code artist and boss at Headbang Club, and also the president at, is it SO Games or
Yeah, Soul Games.
Soul
Okay.
Games. Okay, cool. And you guys are currently making Death Tower. You've been involved with a lot, but hey, please give us a little bit of insight about what Death Tower is. What kind of game is this?
Yeah, the story is our second in-house game that we're working on. It's a tactical JRPG with elements of roguelite, pretty much like the sick child between like Dead Souls and Fire Emblem. So you take stairs and stairs, and you give some fights, and then you do it in a like mega structure that is a bit evolving, and the procedural generation, and then you can cross the stairs and have some fights, loot some stuff, and discover what is behind the story of this mega structure that jail you as a player, of course. And so we are like people originating from motion twin company. So we worked a bit on like Dead Cells and stuff like this. So we are really love the roguelite stuff, and we wanted to have our take on it. Our previous game was slightly different. It was a metal rhythm shooter. You play the metal to shoot at zombies, but we wanted to make something like further. And so the Death Tower universe is much wider and allows for more new stories and new key moments to happen.
Awesome. Yeah, so lots of exciting things going on there with that game, and that definitely sounds very interesting. I'll definitely have to check it out at some point. But that said, I mean, you said it's your second title, but I mean, this is nothing new for you, and I'm sure a lot of other people on your team too. Because I mean, you've developed and shipped over 50 plus games with notable publishers like Ubisoft, THQ, Activision, Motion Twin. was the publisher of, what is it, Shotgun King, The Final Checkmate on consoles. And I mean, if you don't mind, what are a list of some other titles and things you have worked on, just to get a sense of your experience and whatnot?
Yeah, recently we did like some, well, as indies, we are always looking for money. So obviously, we are doing third-party stuff. So we did third-party developments for big clients, like Shiro Games. We worked on Decamation and did the closing. We worked with VBox Interactive and Casus Ludi on Blank. We did some consulting. We did port for Windjammers 2, which was on Game Pass also. And recently, we did the art direction and pre-production materials for a game called Metal Slug Tactics that was out on Game Pass, which is published by .nu. So we are like try to be consistent and making awesome and cool stuff in the gaming.
Yeah, so a little bit of like, some, client-facing projects, but still, working on your own IPs, just like kind of the rest of us that, we're working on our own projects and everything else and doing what
Yeah.
we can to fund and get them out there and do the things we love. Awesome. So lots of cool and exciting things going on there. But when you're not so busy, please, is there anything you do in your spare time to unplug a little or relax?
Actually, I just started Factorio DLC, so I'm not sure it's chill. It's super chill. But I really love to talk with people and exchange and talk about games and have people make their own game. So I'm also like in the association of all the game developer of the southwest of France, which is big. It's home to Ubisoft Bordeaux and Shiro Games, Asobo, Motion Twin. There's a lot of like awesome companies, Battleworks Studio, which means Warhammer Mechanicus, and they are like shipping, they have shipped Ixion, which is also awesome. And we have like a grassroots community, which is super large and super active. And in my spare time, I love to organize events, like more investing events or grassroots events or B2C events. Like we have an experimental game festival that we created, which is called Spawn in our very small city. So yeah, in my spare time, I tend to be in love with making games, but also helping other people to make great games. So we try to do this, and it's taking a lot of time on the weekend, but it's still a pleasure to have like friends. Shipping Ixion was such a pleasure. So yeah, I'm a bit like very active stuff.
Wow, I absolutely love that, especially because you said your community in particular is pretty small, but you're still making a contribution to it and something that relates to you, and clearly the community is loving as well, and that's always good to see, because I think that some of the biggest challenges out there is people like yourself in smaller communities where it doesn't quite get the same presence of things like major cities might and stuff in terms of the game community. So anything we can, and it's always exciting to hear people like yourself and what you're doing to kind of like thrive, like have these communities thrive, especially with games and stuff. It's another great thing to bring everybody together. So that is so awesome, and yeah, it's nice to know you're spending a lot of your spare time doing that too.
Yeah.
Well, that said, and everything else, we want to get to know you a little bit more. So, how we're going to do that, folks, if you're not familiar already, is with the Q Box round. And, the Q Box round, it's just a few random questions I kind of prepared here for David today. So, David, are you ready for the Q Box round?
Yeah.
Excellent. All right. First is, what's one habit you have that has contributed to your success?
I don't know if like I'm smart. I'm not sure I'm like the smartest, but I'm really good at collaborating with people and organizing production. So it helps just to be the person that will help you to go forward, and especially to ship games, because in this industry there's this ship it or lose it culture, and being one of the few people that can say, okay, let's ship this stuff, reduce bugs. Trust me, I can bring people on the table and can help you delegate to the right people. So we like I said, I've co-founded many stuff, and the in collaboration is super important, because you don't do anything by yourself. At least for me, what worked was not doing everything by myself, but being a driving force for other people and to let them exert that talent, and then I can go out and get out of the project because it's online. So what was really important is knowing how to ship something which everyone is proud of, and that's something that helps definitely. Maybe more than any like super technical skills. But I'm also a good developer and also really good at technical stuff. But I think there are so many people good at technical stuff, but people that ship games, they're not so much, and they don't like live super long in this industry. So there's also survival bias. Like you're shipping games, you will get to ship more and more. Actually, I'm at 72 titles I've shipped up to date. So that's something that really helps to be here for other people and let them make the best of their games actually.
Yeah, no, because I mean, you're right. Shipping's important, but also like as you let in with it, it really can kind of stems from collaboration. And if you don't have good collaboration and everything else, and it's just going to make it that much harder to ship things. So, well, thank. All right. So next on the list is then what's one thing that most people don't know about you?
Actually, I'm super shy. I really hate to do like public talking and being like president or anything or fuck all this. I don't really like it because I'm not like at ease. I can speak quite fluently, but over the years, after like 8, 10 years, I happened to realize that I had some things to say and I was not like in the wrong usually. When people say in the first time you listen at David and he says there will be bad things happening, and then you do this thing, and then in the end he was right. So people told me, no, you should talk and you should help people to get the best of what they do because you've seen so many things. And so even though we have to do self-marketing as indies and talk about the game and push it further, the best thing you know is to invest in the good person and a good relationship that will help your games be known, but also your techniques, your development skills, your soft skills. Everything is about sharing and being a programmer. You share stuff, and not sharing was actually I was feeling that I was letting the worst happen, despite the fact that I was knowing it would happen. So yeah, I don't like to talk like too much, but I think that's something that is important. And after a few years, you kind of feel a responsibility to do stuff like correctly.
Yeah. Well, I absolutely love that and love that you're getting at that point. And because clearly if you weren't, I don't know if you'd be here today. So really appreciate that. And it's always great to hear to take strides in that direction, especially if you like you said, over time, you know more and you know that there's something that needs to get out there and people need to hear more about this and share that word and stuff. And I'm glad that it sounds like you've been having a lot of, support from your community and such to do that too. So awesome. That's really great to hear. All right. And now last but not least here on the show is what game are you playing now?
I just launched Factorial's DLC, so I'm screwed. And I'm already still in Inscription and Balatro. I just out of 1,000 hours in Slay the Spires, so I'm no, it's wrong. And I want to try Midnight Sun. So I'm like, I love tactical stuff. I love high density gaming, like people eat these days. I love roguelites and indie stuff. And I don't play too much AAA, just a little bit, but I really love to play games for game designers, I would guess.
Mm, nice. So you have pretty good lineup there, and it sounds like there's always something that you have ready and queued in your library.
Yes.
Awesome.
1,000 hour at a time.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you for going through the Q box around with us. And now let's get into our conversation for today, which, folks, as I shared earlier, which is, we're talking about standing out and optimizing game marketing. And, to kick off our conversation, David, as lots of us probably know, there are just lots of places to start with marketing a game. But in light of that, like, what are some initial steps you believe are crucial for indie developers to, take before anything else? Like, what is that first step that I don't know from your experience that you would call out to?
Over the years, I would say that everything changes always and everybody lies. So you have a lot of challenges just knowing what this day, today, this morning, this week will be a good marketing move for your game. And it's really hard because sometimes something you believe in just isn't there anymore. For example, it's really hard to get to have a streamer check out your game. So you have to find out what is possible and review resources and see what can take. And you can also have a lot of good games now don't see the light, don't see their players. So the thing is, when you start to market a game, you check out where are your players. I mean, Shotgun King, their players are not in the same place, just physically, as the players for Death Tower or Double Kick Heroes, and they don't talk to each other. They don't like the same games. So the first thing first is know where the player is, what he or they love, and how you can get to them when know the game exists. Usually, if you make a good game, when they see the game, they will just stick to it, and we can have a lot of good stuff. So there's not like so much like marketing repetition and hammering the message. It's more about, hey, your players are here, so let's talk with them with a great game, and then you can make something. But yeah, that this is a preparation phase that is really complicated, and so you should not pass on it.
Yeah, I think that that last point is super important to call out to because, we get into that, we might get into that idea of like, have the passion and everything else that's getting us to create this game and everything else. But then we sometimes forget, hey, but who are our players? Who are we actually making this for? And while we might go through some exercises or thoughts of who that entails or could be, like you said, it's quite a process to, really dive in and to understand and really know who your players are because if we just do things at a top level, surface level, it might be really, it would probably make things really challenging to stand out. And ultimately, that's what we're looking to do is standing out. But if we're just doing at the what everybody else is doing at a top level, well, that becomes a challenge.
Yeah, I remember a friend of mine, which is from Romoran, won like 100K of advertising for his game. So they spent 100K of advertising, but it was like a super intellectual, super smart game about emotions and travel and immigrants and stuff like this. And it did bring nothing in the end. That this it was like, just like burning dollars and dollars. It was not like his dollars, but still, if you are not talking to your players at the right time and the right moment, you will just burn every resources you have. So it's really important.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that is a really good example in terms of how, money, especially regardless of how it's spent, if it's not right resonating, if it's not finding the right audience, if it's not doing those things, then it almost doesn't matter what dollar amount you have behind it. It's just not going to be it's not going to be effective at what it needs to do.
Yeah.
So yeah, great example. Now, I kind of want to just dive into some different areas here specifically because I think this is a fun one. It can be fun. It can also be a little challenging, but the idea of, experimentation in marketing, right? Like trying new things and iterating upon stuff. So I was just curious because I know sometimes some of us might get these fun ideas and a little different. Like, have there been any times when you tried, let's say, an unconventional marketing strategy, whether it's a guerrilla style or however you want to define it, just unconventional? What insights did you gain from this experience?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm not like super good at PR stunts, which is something that is cool, like saying, "Hey, I will put goats on my game and it will like work." So this is not the kind of thing I do. But when we did Double Kick Heroes, we made the worst game you can make, which is a rhythm game mashed up with a shooter. So mashups are like notoriously bad. And it was a game jam, and it was metal, and metal was out of fashion. It was pixel art, it was out of fashion. So, and it worked when we did the jam about the game and it buzzed and we had 50,000 downloads. So I thought to myself, okay, so people want to play metal games and pixel art games and stuff. But who are these people? They are not like with people that review games, and they are not the kind of people who talk about games commonly. They are people who just said, it's a pixel art game and it's fun and it's metal, it's okay to me. So the thing is, I said, okay, let's see where these players are. And it happens that in France, we have like the largest metal festival in Europe, which is called Hellfest. And I said, okay, there's like 200,000 people that goes to Hellfest. They would probably have like video games people because it's everywhere. And then we have been invited to the festival. So we bought like 5,000 flyers, and every morning in the festival, we were giving out flyers. And then we did the same with Download Festival. So we've been like to most of the biggest metal venues, and it worked like so well because for every player I gave, we had half a player which was coming and wishlisting the game or downloading the demo. So getting back to physical when every marketing was so like becoming digital and disconnected with reality, and giving out beautiful flyers with a nice UV coating, and which is like a craft in itself, was like super rewarding. We were talking to the players and say, hey, you make this game and I've seen it. And it was like super rewarding and really connected with the audience. And it was like a super return on investment because our players were here. And in the end, when the game went out, we were on Game Pass. So the first like sales were not like that great, but more than half of our sales were in France, actually, which is super rare for games. It never happens usually. So we managed to gain and create a community here with flyers in hand. And I was like, it was super rewarding and it worked. So it was cool.
Yeah, I'll say because that's definitely unconventional. Because I'm sure when most people are thinking flyers, they're thinking that's the last thing that they're gonna go invest in. And I mean, and not only that, like, sometimes we might think about conventions, right? And everybody has some type of flyer, card, QR code, whatever, and they're just handing them out. And whether you're set it up to attribute or not, it still you might not get the results that you would think, and all that. But this one's different. And what I like about this is like you're like, okay, who are we like, again, you went back to that thing that you let in earlier, like who's our audience, who are the players. But it wasn't just like playing this kind of game. You're like, well, the game does have this element of totally focus on metal. And we got this festival here that is pretty damn big and cool. So I don't know. There's got to be players there out of like what you say, like 200,000. Yeah, I would think so. And then and think of it from their perspective. They're there. They're gonna have a good time, and the intent is obviously to have fun. And while they're there, well, it still seems like, are they expecting anybody to hand a flyer that's about a game about metal?
No.
So I love that, and I think it's those kind of ideas which I think are so interesting and fun, where you know you go to these places and where people aren't expecting these things, and then next thing you know, like, oh, but I'm sure you guys had some level of understanding to like, hey, this
Yeah.
could work, and plus you probably had the acceptance too, like this could completely just suck and fail, but at least I imagine you had fun at the concert regardless of handing out the flyers and everything else, right?
Yeah, was it like the Rhythm Against the Machine thing, and then Aerosmith, and then all the great bands I loved. So it was like awesome. In the morning, flyers, and spend the night with Rob Zombies. So like it was awesome.
Yeah,
But
so
we did a lot of this kind of thing. For example, when we went to a convention of like LAN, where you can play just Counter-Strike, and we bring a bar top of arcade, and we are like the only arcade game in a LAN convention, in a multiplayer convention. Actually, the pro players take a lot of time to chill off. And so they said, hey, it's an arcade, and we are in a universe where every game is multiplayer. This is single player, awesome. Single player, okay, I love it. So we try to always get to something which is super tangential, but could make sense at some level.
Yeah, so it sounds like too that like you're always looking out for kind of those potential opportunities where it's like, okay, there's this venue and they're really focusing on this, and yes, we relate, but we're a little bit different here, and that difference could mean everything in terms of people are like, yeah, I actually, all right, yes, this is what I want right now because that's
Yeah.
yeah, again, like differences make a difference. Wow. Such a funny phrase. That's pretty cool. Now, I want to go into this idea a little bit further too. Like, okay, so you came up with this idea. Let's hand out flyers at this concert and other things like, hey, how can we position ourselves so we're differentiate ourselves a little bit? How do you like go ahead and determine like when to abandon, let's say, a particular marketing approach versus refining and giving it another shot? Because it's like, hey, these are some crazy ideas, they work out well, and maybe we have other ones, and like how do we know at what point should we not do this anymore? It's just not cutting it.
Well, we worked at Motion Twin, and before that says Motion Twin, we did free to play. So we basically imported the free to play model in France. That the company was like super successful. And when that sales was created, we had like 33 million players. So we knew a lot about like dark patterns and strategies to get player to do stuff and to create frustration. And actually, that's something that we was just burned out with. It didn't make sense anymore because people were playing games because they were invested in it, and we wanted to people to play games because it was a game. It was fun and it was smart, and not because it was smart about being like misdirecting or giving a wrong sense of what happens. So it's just us. We didn't want to continue to repeat the same like deceptive things. So that's why I'm sure Twin Go they went to themselves on Steam and created good games because they knew how to make good games without like resorting to free to play. But in general, we try to stay smart and just make things that look like fun and awesome. And we start like dark patterns and things like this because yeah, we definitely feel that the world is better with like a cultural approach to making a game, which is not making just a game for fun, but saying stuff about society, what you want, what everything, and stories and visuals, and try to say stuff in your game, even if it's light, and then you can have subtext and you can convey values and talk about how the society can be constructed better with everything. But it's still a metal game. So the thing is, we did not want it to get back to like trying to cater to bad things in humanity. We wanted to make games essentially. So that's thing that we learned about like 5 years of free to play and stuff like this. So we try many things, but we tend to stay focused on trying to be smart enough, I would say.
Okay, cool. So in trying many things, then as you go through that process and stuff, like are there sometimes that you find yourself like really hanging your laurels or like meaning like really focusing on one thing, even though let's say the results might not be as promising. Like let's say there's something the team is all about, but the results aren't there. Do you still push through it, or do you move on, or like
No, we move on very fast. We tend to test things with like not many. We're indies. We cannot like put 100K in whatever. It's always more interesting to convince people hand in hand and hey, you can sit with the game and get to conventions and get to events. And so we try to benchmark events. We try to see where the players are. So it's always the same strategy to move on fast and find something that works and feels smart and in line with the game itself.
yeah, and that's interesting, but it totally makes sense though because it's like, hey, we could have these passion projects or whatever we want to call it. We just these things are our babies, our little darlings, right? But the reality of it too, sometimes, I mean, it's as much as it might feel like it, they're not our offspring. They're not these living life forms, and if we take care of them too long, ultimately they could bring us down with them. And like, because there's only a finite amount of resources that we have to keep putting on these things. So it's almost
Yeah.
like, you know, push it out, see if it's, and hey, and yes, there's always the what if game too, right? Oh, what if we had more money?
Yes.
What if we had more time for marketing? What if all
Yeah.
this? But the reality sometimes is maybe it's not worth it. Let's go to the next one. And
That's something we actually learned with Dead Cells, because the game was so long to get out that it was rebooted and rebooted and rebooted over and all over, burning out teams. And we had a lot of money, but in the end, what provoked the game to ship was the money wasn't just not there, and so they said, okay, let's ship something. And I think the what if we have more money just doesn't work really for game developers and indie game developers. You get ship games that stand on their own shoulder, on their own legs, and I believe really that it's not really that much a matter of resources. It's a matter of making games that talk to people and talk to you in the first place, and have them out, even if it's imperfect. You go with the jank and you ship the thing when it's done. And so trying to be bold with your own ideas pretty fast is like a cool hygiene.
I absolutely love that line you just said, which is it's not a matter of resources. It's about, and I'm paraphrasing here, what resonates with players, right? It's such an important one, I think, that we forget to consider because again, we always play, like I was talking about before, we'll play that what if game, but even if we have all these things, and you led in with that example too, you said that that colleague of yours had all this money that they were dumping on it, and for what? Nothing, right? So still, I think those are some, great examples of why it really comes down to not so much about the resources, but is the game doing what it's supposed to do? Is it engaging and resonating and creating that experience that this specific audience is really liking? And if it's not, then yeah, I love that point. But sorry, I had to I had to capture that one quote though because I thought that was said so well and so succinctly. So love it. Okay, so on that theme and stuff, I mean, we kind of talked about some examples already that you shared with us, like especially the unconventional stuff. But I want to dive into like, how do we find what stands out, right? And in some cases, I'm sure it could be accidental, and in some cases, it's intentional. But when we get to these positions, lots of cool stuff typically happens. What would you say are some characteristics or even elements of marketing campaigns that you've seen resonate the most with audiences?
Well, differentiation is definitely something that is important, but it doesn't do everything. And then I think it's important that whatever is your idea, go with the flow and be super straightforward and push it to its limit. See where it goes, and if it's only like a copycat or something, it's not like worth the investment. So you get to try always to be between the blue and the red ocean. And there's this fine limit, which is having good opportunities with stuff. And then when you find out something that resonates with players, when you put them on the game, try to do stuff like super well crafted, short as possible, because people don't need like a profusion of stuff to be convinced. They need like this quick, flashy things that say this works. And so try to be good about cutting stuff, making good choices, cutting the most of the things you can, and be honest and be smart and straightforward. So don't fall too much in love with your ideas. Show it to players, and if they love it, go with the flow and go full quality. And if they don't love it, try to analyze why there is no love. And I mean love like passion. Why is it not like mind-blowing? And maybe you will have to get to the point to say, okay, all my visual effects are crap. I have to redo this all over again so they feel like the intent. And sometimes it will just not work because the core of the game is not here. So let's make another game jam. So that's like why Motion Twin which was a company that spawned a lot of other companies like Shiro Games and Evil Empire, who were good at making game jams and having a lot of ideas to iterate, and then you throw content and you try some new stuff. The friends from Buckcake this year are also like this. They are making one game a month or every 2 months sometimes, and that's how they get to Shotgun King, which was like, let's like chess with a shotgun, and this idea is like so simple, so straightforward, just like play Rock Band and shoot at zombies. And sometimes you get to the point that the smallest and most powerful page is your best friend to differentiate and to resonate with people. It's trying to have something that you can pitch in like 2 words, 3 words. And if your pitch is like you need 100 words to explain your games, probably it's not like a super good idea to push.
Yeah, and that's definitely one area too that's always a challenge too, to distill like a whole concept down into a few words, right? Whether it's a sentence or even a phrase. And I think so that's a process in itself, but I think you're right. If you're having difficulty doing that, then there could be other underlying problems there too. One thing I liked what you said earlier too was, just calling out with it sounds like too, yes, standing out's important, but
Mm.
at the same time, when it comes to, let's say, specific activities and everything else, sometimes you can totally overthink it. Like if you're trying to think of some crazy strategy or something that no one else has done before, chances are, well, yes, they already have done it before. And the other part is, if you're spending so much time thinking about these things and you're not executing or doing anything,
Yeah.
then nothing's happening. So I like that too, because I think sometimes we may get caught in the trap of, hey, well, let's we got to do this. There's this other shiny object in out there that is gonna solve all my problems, the magic bullet and everything else. And I know we know there's no such thing as magic bullets, but we're humans. Anytime there's a shiny object that could give us that glimmer of promise of to succeed, we're going
Yeah.
to want to try to go for it. I mean, I think a lot of us are subject to this, myself included. I've trained myself a little bit better over the years, but it's still there.
I love to call it the update unity strategy. So you're here and the game runs like crap, and you say, okay, let's update unity. And I was playing like 4 hours. And well, maybe you just could have profiled the game and removed textures, and in 10 minutes you would be good to go. But you felt that updating Unity and having new bugs was something that would help. And actually, something it's like it's a comfort, it's reassuring, but sometimes it's like a way to just divert from facing the real problems.
Yeah, I like that. And what did you call it? The opportunity strategy?
I don't know, the update Unity strategy to solve problems.
I love it. But yeah, I mean, again, like as you mentioned before, sometimes, just hey, be honest with yourself. Try to come to terms maybe sometimes and straightforward and yeah, go with that flow, because otherwise if we're overthinking these things and whatnot, we could just make more challenges for ourselves. And even though the goal is to be standing out, I mean, and that's the other thing too is, and I think you shared some points on this too. I mean, standing out, it really comes down to the game. Like, what is that hook? What are those key features and stuff that core gameplay? And speaking of the core gameplay, I mean, when we're doing these things, and as you said too, it could be hard to articulate some of those concepts and stuff, but even harder with visuals. I mean, is there anything that any additional comments that you can share in terms of like how we can really show this game, especially in a very simple, especially visual format, so people really get it? Because we want to make sure, especially the right audience, gets it. And sometimes that's a challenge. So are there any like specific things that can be done so that core aspect of the game can really shine through those materials?
Well, the first thing is the game should like work by itself. This is something that is like the minimum required. Back in the days, it was not like really the case, but right now you cannot pass on this. So the first thing first is just to spend time on the game, and then when you just show 10 seconds of it in the streams, and people are like, "Hey, looks really cool." Then you can shine through marketing materials with trailers, screenshots, every screenshot on the Steam page must be like perfect. And if it's not perfect, well, get back to the game, improve the game, then have the screenshot, which is really okay. If you have to remove features, but it will give you time to polish the screenshot, just do it. So people tend to solve long-term problems, and I tend to say, get your attention on what the people will see first, and will say that is the first problem you have. That's something that I don't always apply to myself, so I'm guilty here. But the thing is, we should solve the first class problem, like right now, right here, and treat every character like it's an awesome character or inspiring character. Treat every past process that would put and that will be visible in trailer and screenshots. So you get to drive things with what player can see and can objectivate, like right now when they will see the things. And it doesn't mean that you don't have to pay attention to subtext and artistic consideration. It just means you have to choose between, if you have to choose between things, start with the core and with being like resolved focused on what people will see and perceive, I would say, more than see. And if you have every perception right and done well enough, then you can like polish stuff and go for stuff. It should always be in a fashion where it's, as indies, we don't have super lot of money because there's publishers, there are bankers, there's everybody that will take that all. So every shot should be like cheap enough, and you should have a strategy to make them cheap enough, I think, in my opinion.
Yeah, so it ultimately sounds like, hey, work within your means, but make it the best you possibly can, but in your means. And because it's like, if you're not conveying these things, if you're doing it half-assed, or not really considering it, or again, like, consider the audience, like you're always saying, who's the players, who are there, and then look at it from their eyes. Because if they're coming to it the first time, be like, I have no idea what this is an image of. It doesn't look like the kind of game it says it is, so I'm confused. And when we get to that point, then that's a miss in terms of getting a wish list. And yeah, doing everything we can to avoid that is important. So yeah, like you said, and again, it's like you got to go with the flow, because and again, we got to go with the flow, and it's not always about the resources, but you can do things within your means and still make it look polished and well, like look and shine right through. So, and again, it's about basic communication. So with that, what we were talking and everything else, like, I'm just curious, like, lots of things going on and everything else, and this idea of optimization and everything, like, how do you approach kind of evaluating the impact of marketing effort, especially when the results aren't immediately obvious? Because let's face it, we could do lots of activities and be like, nothing's happening, and because we're looking right away, we do something, and then we go straight to Steam in the back end and be like, how many wish lists did we get yesterday? How come it's not updating yet? I like, so what are things that we can kind of measure and evaluate, these results, especially keeping in mind that, hey, they don't happen right away? Like, what are things that we can do on that front?
Well, back in the days when we did Fitch Play, we did like A/B tests and stuff like this, and it was like optimizing 10, 20%. But right now, I'm just lazy. I'm just saying, hey, does it look good? So if the team says, yeah, it looks good and it's great and it inspires us like some pleasure to make stuff, usually it's already a good sign, and player will see it in the long run. So we don't micro optimize every bit. We really try to build a universe of stuff that will be coherent and look good. And we try then to send trailers to screenshots and stuff. And we're like confident in the brand, I would say. And so we don't spend like time in micro optimizing everything. You cannot do that, because there's not so much wish list that you want to have like 40 wish lists and then you want to have like 8 more wish lists. It doesn't work like this. We're not, as in this, we don't do like big number mathematics. We're a small number mathematics. Every day there's 10, 20, maybe a spike to 1,000 wish list. So we tend to try, hey, how did we generate that spike? And we want to replicate this spike because it was cool and it was so cool, people liked it. And then YouTube said, hey, I will feature on your homepage. And it explodes. So we tend to not do micro optimization. It's more like getting smart, changing the game and trying other stuff until we hit something that will make big spikes. And then we don't even like spend times to micro analyze these spikes. We just say, hey, that happens. And then we try something else, and we try to constitute a corpus of strategies with this game, this work, and we want like micro process stuff. So we don't like, oftentimes you go and see an on wish list, you see your wish list spike and it's good. But sometimes it's just not worth the time to spend a day to micro optimize that one ad or something. But I think it's like super very specific to indie games. You cannot do this for apps, you cannot do this for like double games. And maybe that's something that we learn as indies is you don't sell indies like you're selling everything else. I mean, an indie production have something that is inherently very atypical, very diverse, very strange, very mind-blowing. If you see like Cocoon, it's like this unique setup and this unique stuff, or like Greece or anything. So we tend to be focused on making the next smart move, and then we see the ROI all over the brand. So yeah, that's it. I would say you try to go with what works, but not necessarily evaluate like an immediate ROI, because we don't have the mathematical logic of big numbers that goes with like monitoring every ROI. I'm not sure it's something that, if you want to convey stuff, you have to take into account that factor re-exposition, and if there's the character, his eyes are bigger or stuff like this. So as in this, that's something that definitely we feel that is not necessary. Usually we prefer to try to create something else and approach with another approach. I don't want to focus on like supersizing a character 10, 20 pixels. So usually when you do this and you try to bring large changes to the table, you see the spike. Just right now it will come. And so you don't need a lot of time to micro optimize stuff, because you spend some time of making content like tangentially better. I don't know. It's very empirical, but it's the way we feel we're satisfied with developing.
Yeah, I think you make a lot of interesting points there too. And like across the board, I think where when we get into these moments, we're kind of looking for those quick returns, right? So whether we're looking for those spikes, whether we're looking from things day to day, or making those little adjustments, ultimately, when we're in that mode, it sounds like it's a matter of, because it's something we have control over. But the future, right? We don't necessarily have control over it. So if we don't get immediate feedback or inputs or whatever, just immediate data, then it can kind of put us in almost a state of like, okay, well, I don't know what else to do. Is it working? If it's not working, I don't want to keep doing it. And then it's like, sometimes, and it sounds great, because it's like, hey, if you overanalyze some of these things and everything else, like part of when you were talking about this, what was I envisioning was sometimes it's really good to look at things from a like a month to month perspective, and or even like a longer time period, and if anything, like this is one of the reasons why personally I'm not a fan of the Steam backend when it shows data, because anytime you look at it for whatever range, it's a day to day result, which is driving me. It's always drives me nuts. But a better representation in terms of how we're treating maybe our behavior and how we think about immediate results and stuff is look at like SteamDB, where they're just showing a trajectory, or the overall growth of follower counts. And when you do that and you could chop it up into little levels, and then you're saying, oh look, the overall trajectory of our progress of this that we're doing, and of those little spikes that we were able to get, great. Now we're saying, oh look, this is what it's accounting to. And then it's a better way of looking at it than looking at because if we're just focusing on spikes all the time, basically it's peaks and valleys. If you're always on the peak and you're not careful, you could just fall down to your death in the valley. So Maybe a rough
That
analogy there, but
there's something like is yeah, I have the word. It's like probably you prefer to influence 1% of every medium, the top 1%, that 10% like on Reddit only. Because this way you create a crowd of like the person that are the more invested in your game, and there's this crowd can contaminate more rather than like micro contaminating. So I think also like I don't know if it's something, but marketing diversity is important, and it's something like a better approach to these kind of problems. We are always as programmers taught to optimize one thing at the time. And in real life, it doesn't happen this way. You just try to go and cover a maximum of people with a few tiny touch. So maybe that's also something that is correlated to that is don't spend too much time on one stuff, but try to be everywhere at once, and maybe on for a small percentage of people. But if those are the right people, you will have much more strength to snowball for everyone.
yeah, essentially, I think I would take that too as, taking a holistic approach. We know it can be challenging to be everywhere at once, and that's ideal, but you can still take a holistic approach and think of ways, again, within your means of how you can go about doing that. And I think you did that is a great, summary right there, David, is like, hey, try to get a little bit bigger if you can, because if you're just doing that one thing over and over again, well, it probably isn't going to amount to much, no matter how much you optimize it, at least, in the grand scheme of things. So, well, I know we're coming on time here, and this has just been such a delightful conversation. But before we part, one, I know you have a special thing for us, but before we get to that, based off of our conversation today, do you have any tips, suggestions for listeners today that they could walk away with?
Yeah, but first thing first is get the word out, show what you are doing. No fucking amount of publishers will save your ass these days. They don't exist any longer, and their money is like so expensive that they won't consider you unless you have already 10 titles with 1 million and stuff. So now that publisher is the anomaly, let's get our games out. So get the word out. Have a village backing you because your other peers have survived. So probably they know how to survive. Personally, I never have a game published in my games. And so you can survive without this. So you better trust your village. That will help you. The guys we give you some work, and then you can give them work, and then you can exchange good practices. So this is something that really works, is to talk with your community and say meet your peers, and people are always eager to talk, like people which if you come by with the people from like Annapurna, Devolver, you can talk to them and then they will give you good hints. They won't publish you, but just do what they do, and then maybe you can have a fraction of a success. So this is like always a good opportunity to just talk without interest with people which are like super specialized in this. So that's what we did in the beginning. Say we want to make indie games. Let's talk with Devolver. We won't get published, but at least they can help us understand how to approach the things and be tangential and be like super pertain. And yeah, that's it. Don't be afraid to ask around to great people and just be open with them. Say, hey, I know you won't publish us, but can you maybe give a hint how to do stuff? Or I know we cannot work together, but what's your recipe and what do you want to say to people that are starting? And most of the time, people you just send a message on LinkedIn and they will just answer with a lot of wisdom. So that's how we got started. And I think rather than thinking that you can hide in a cave and work like 5 years on something, just hide in your cave and see people time to time. It will probably help you very much. So that's it. And trust your community.
Awesome. Well, very good tips there, and thank you so much for sharing them. And in terms of this, kind of special offer deal thing, you have something that you're willing to give to a few listeners, and what is that exactly?
Yeah, we have Steam keys for you to distribute. So if you want to like make a game or a contest or anything, and these are our Steam keys for Double Kick Heroes. So we would be happy to share the love of the metal. So don't hesitate.
Yeah, so folks, if you're interested in the game Double Kick Heroes, we only have a few keys available. First come, first serve. So if you're interested at all, we'll make it simple. Just reach out to me directly, Andrew at rengenmarketing.com, and just put in the title, I don't know, Double Kick Heroes, DKH sounds pretty cool. Whatever relates to the podcast or the game and the subject line, and we'll make sure to get those to you. Again, limited amount, first comes, first serve. And David, thank you for providing those for our listeners today. Very much appreciate that. And hey, for anybody who wants to learn more about, and I'm trying to quickly go back here, Death Tower. I almost said Dark Tower, but it's Death Tower. People want to learn more about Death Tower, Headbang Club, your studio, or connect with you. What are some links and ways that people can do that?
Yeah, thank you very much.
Or sorry, what are some links and stuff where people, like, are you on LinkedIn? Like, what are other profiles and stuff?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn, David Elahee, and then you can go get back to our site. And we're like, Blue Sky is like super awesome these days. It works like very much. So don't hesitate to reach out there, and we would be happy to answer if you have questions or if we can help. Don't hesitate. It will be with pleasure.
All right, sweet. And guys, those links and everything will be in the show notes too. David, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much for the invitation.
Hey everyone, thank you for listening to another episode of Indie Game Movement. I'm Andrew Pappas, your host, and the show's producer is Mustafa Price. Show notes for this episode can be found by visiting rengenmarketing.com, the number episode of the show. Rengen Marketing is a consulting marketing company that helps indie devs with their marketing efforts. Whether you need guidance with your game's marketing strategy or could use a free marketing plan template, then please visit www.rengenmarketing.com and take action. A special thanks to Dakota Saw for Season 2's opening theme and Melissa Gellis for the new logo design. And as always, thanks for being such great listeners, and we'll see you next time on Indie Game Movement.